All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming. My name is Dustin Schaller. I spent 25 years at Dynojet. Recently, I've been working with Mike for about the last 3 months now. And I'm not like Derek. Derek is super technical, super smart guy. I've learned a lot from Derek. I appreciate his input. He's the type of guy that will go down a rabbit hole in a big way, and I can tell you what buttons to push to make this bike run really good. I know how to make this bike run good and the way I like it. Derek can tell you how it's running good. He will say, oh yeah, because it's doing this and the thermal dynamics of this and all that, which is great. It's made me a better tuner and I really appreciate him, and you guys should, if you have any questions with him, he's the guy. I started with Dynojet as a phone tech guy. Did that for many years. It wasn't really for me, and I said, hey, I need a little bit more, and we started going down into, they gave me some stuff to do in the back. So I started changing pipes, changing tunes. I spent all day, every day, taking a pipe off, making a tune, taking a pipe off, making another tune. Did that for years. So I have a lot of experience in that realm. I did a lot with the piggyback style like he talked about, the Power Commander. I was around when the Power Commander first was developed. We kind of brought that up, and then we got into the Flash. Reflashing the stock ECU is really where it's at these days. Not so much for these bikes, because they really are a dumb bike compared to what's out there. You compare the technology of this bike compared to the new R1 or Ducati V4R or something like that, this is 30 years behind. You know, those bikes with drive-by-wire, you know, and multiple O2 sensors and all the inputs they do, there's a lot going on in there. So with those bikes, you almost have to reflash the ECU to get what you want out of them. Some of that is due to emissions. Some of that is just due to the parameters of the bike. These bikes, much simpler. You can do a lot more with them with a lot less. All right? So, and that kind of brings it to how I met Mike. So 2020, I bought a KTM 500 EXC. I started getting on the YouTubes, came across some really bad videos, came across Mike's videos, and I'm like, this guy seems to know what he's talking about, and kind of like you guys, probably just started following him and learning about the bike. He was really good about telling you what this bike needed, what little parts were no good, why they were no good, and I'm like, I started buying this stuff and all that. Went on a trip with a couple of buddies on a big bike trip. I was on a GS, and he happened to be on it, and I'm like, you're the YouTube dude. So we kind of hit it off, you know, and started talking, and he's like, oh, you work for Dynojet? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, why don't you sell Power Commander? He goes, those suck. He was pretty blunt about it. He goes, they're no good. You got to have the Get ECU. I was like, man, I says, on these bikes, I says, I can make them run pretty damn good. I had one on my bike at the time. And he's like, no way, dude. I says, you're from Vegas, I'm from Vegas, bring a bike to me. I says, I guarantee you, I'm gonna make about the same horsepower as a Get. He's like, okay. So he brought one down, I tuned it, and he was like, well, son of a bitch. He's like, rode really good. So we started, you know, doing more tunes. He started bringing bikes to me, and he was pretty excited that he had access to a dyno at the time. So we started taking all these little widgets that everybody's trying to sell on the internet, and he's like, let's try this, let's try that. And we spent 2-3 days just swapping stuff and figuring out what it would do. And that just turned into this. So after I left Dynojet, whatever, you know, he's like, hey, help me start tuning some stuff. At the time that I left Dynojet, we were going down the hole of flashing ECUs. We had already done it for Yamaha, some Hondas, some Kawasaki's. KTM was something we hadn't done yet. And I kept telling them, like, we got to do this. This is, you know, they sell a lot of bikes. We can, you know, do some good sales with this. Mike was after a solution at the time, and he really put a big push into Dynojet directly to the CEO of the company, and it worked. All of a sudden, you know, our guy's like, hey, stop doing everything you're doing on Honda. Let's jump on KTM. So they went full tilt on KTM, and they got it pretty quick, because the guy that was working on the Honda, it's the same ECU. Honda ECU is the same base ECU that's in this KTM. So he's like, hey, I already know a lot about that. He goes, I just got to figure out the security side of it, and we can get to this project pretty quick. And they did. So Mike was the first one, and we were the first ones to test any of this stuff months ago in the country. So we've got, you know, quite a few bikes, obviously, as you can see, and we've been mapping them and plugging away at them quite a bit, and we've made some good progress on them. So you can do a lot with them. And, you know, I'm going to start off kind of back up just so everybody has some history on it. You know, like I said with Mike, the Power Commander, piggyback style device. It goes inline of your of your injector. It goes inline of your crank position sensor, and of course we have to have TPS input. Very basic, kind of like what Derek said. You're still relying on what's in the stock ECU. So that is still doing its thing as it normally would. All it's doing now is as that injector signal goes out, we're picking that up and we're saying stay on longer, stay on shorter. That's all we're really doing. It's very simple, but it works very well. You can do as much fuel as you would ever want to do in this thing, and you can make your bike run 90% as good as anything else. It does not have timing control. It does fuel only. But some stuff that this does do that people don't understand is you can also do gear position input, which a lot of the standard ECUs couldn't do. So with gear position input, I can now have a different fuel curve in every gear. So you want a little softer in first gear, second, third, a little bit more power, maybe fifth, sixth. You lean it out for fuel mileage. You can do all that kind of stuff in this. You can have auto tune built into this. Dynojet is the only company, well, not the only company that Mike deals with, that has true auto tune. So you can bring in an O2 sensor. There's another little module you put on the bike. O2 sensor plugs into this. You have a target AFR table. And as you're riding around, it's tuning all the time. So I just recently, actually my Power Commander is still on my bike actually as of today. My bike always runs perfect. It's always learning, it's always mapping. So Derek talked about altitude. I don't care what the stock ECU can and can't learn because this O2 sensor is always learning for me. So I'm constantly tuning, it's constantly correcting. It works really, really good. Now there's some drawbacks to this. Could this fail? Absolutely. Dynojet did a pretty good job with it. At the time, they were running like less than a 2% return rate, which is really good for an electronics company. But can this fail on the trail? Sure. Nick a wire, something goes wrong on the board. If that happens, bike dies. Now, luckily, it's easy. It's not like a Ducati V4R. You can get to the injector very easily. You unplug it, plug it back in stock. At least you're going to run off your stock ECU at that time, and you'll get home. Not going to run as good, but you'll get home. So this is not a bad solution. You know, people don't give this whole solution enough credit. It works really well. Mike sold a ton of them. When, again, after we did that little deal and I showed him how good it worked, Dynojet sales were like 5 a month, maybe, not that much. All of a sudden, our sales went 50 a month. And my boss is like, what the hell's going on? I'm like, oh, I met this dude in Utah and he does this. And he's like, holy cow. And he was doing like 50 a month there for quite a long time. It's tapered off some, but it still is a good viable solution. The issue you're gonna have now is the way it competes in price. This is $450, I believe it is. You know, so it's getting up there to the ECU side. Would I do an ECU over a Power Commander? Yeah, probably. You know, if money was not an option, I would reflash my ECU with, you know, a Get or something like that. The next solution from Dynojet is reflashing your stock ECU, and that's kind of what I just talked about. That's something new to Dynojet. Like I said, they just launched March 1st. We've had it for a little bit. Mike launched it March 1st, and it's a really good solution. So what we can do is take your stock ECU, you send it into Taco Moto, we're putting a tune in it. And in that tune, Dynojet has software, and I had this cool presentation for you guys to show you all this, but Mike spent too much money on exhaust pipes and not Excel, so I can't put it on the screen. So, but within that stock ECU, Dynojet is able to extrapolate the tables that's in it, right? So a lot of it depends on how good the engineer is. You have to have a guy that can figure out what those ones and zeros are and figure out, okay, those ones and zeros are my fuel table. Those ones and zeros are my ignition table. Those are this. So it's up to him to find all that data and bring it into a software that me, a tuner, any tuner can, you know, figure out and push the right buttons and make it do what it wants to do. And they've done a really good job. Again, the guy that is doing this has been around a long time. He used to be in the HP world, did a lot of automotive stuff, so he's pretty sharp. And he's given some stuff that I saw today. I got a new definition just this morning. It's got everything in it. So I can do full fuel, full ignition, launch control, traction control, startup fuel, tip-in, barrel sensors. I mean, everything that these Get and aftermarket ECUs can do, I can do in the stock ECU now. So that's pretty cool. What does that do for you? Well, it retains your stock warranty, not that any of us really care about a warranty. If you were to bring this into a dealership with a reflashed ECU, the dealer can still read the stock tool. So all that's retained. So basically it's like you just ride around in your stock OEM ECU. And some people like that. Some people like, hey, KTM did a good job. I want to retain their stock reliability. I'm worried about some aftermarket part of my bike. Great. And I can get you every bit of performance that any aftermarket ECU can get you. You know, so at the end of the day, you know, everybody just wants a good running bike, right? That's all you guys care about. You just want to spend some money at Taco Moto and you want your bike to run good. So how you get there, you guys don't normally really care. Excuse me. So the map that's in here is what matters. Who's the tuner, right? So there's some other guys that do flash ECUs out there. Why buy from Taco Moto? Well, you hope his tune is better, right? I hope my tune is the best. We spend a lot of time doing it. I can prove to you that it runs really good with the dyno. And that's very important with who you're buying your stuff from. You know, are they doing the tuning themselves? There's guys out there that are selling stuff that they don't really do, you know, the tuning. They're doing it from some third party. They have no idea what's going on, so they can't tell you exactly what's going on. Mike can tell you, hey, I've tested this. I can show you the numbers. We go out, we ride. As you can see, he's got plenty of bikes. He does a lot of testing. So we hope that the map is the best it possibly can be. You know, and in that, we're going to still refine some stuff. Like I said, today, I just got a new file for this bike. We had a 17 through 19, we had that full file already, and we've been playing with some of those parameters. We just got it today for the 24 bikes. So what does that mean? The map is going to probably change down the road. Now that we have some more knobs to turn, we're going to go turn them and figure out what works best. That map may be improved down the road. And if so, if you have done a flash from Mike and it doesn't have that and we come out with a new map, send it back in. Be happy to update you with that map. It's not a problem. Chris here today just came in. He, you know, had his bike, you know, flashed earlier. He was running around on a bone, well, not bone stock. He had his reeds fell out as usual. He did the end cap and he's been riding around like that. And like Derek said, you should not run your bike like that.
No, and I did that end cap last night.
Did you? Okay.
For this.
Okay. So
it started without the reflash, and I was like, oh, it's not running very good.
Yeah, and it's not going to hurt the bike, but so stock bike, like Derek was saying, 38 horsepower. They run pretty lean, about 15 to 1 AFR. Target AFR is about 13.0 is what you want for best peak performance. They're running about 15.0. You take the reeds out, you take all that stuff out, it runs like 16 to 1. That's dangerously lean. You would never want to run your bike like that. So anybody out there that's seen this, do not take your reeds out, do not put a muffler on it without flashing your ECU or doing something to correct the tune. So that stock flash, again, send it in, send it back to you. Mike, what's the turnaround time?
We're targeting 3 days.
3 days, 3 days. So there is that, you know, inconvenience of being without your beloved toy for a couple days. You got to send it in, but we'll get it back to you. And that is $320?
Yeah, I think final retail now is $319.
$319. Okay, so that's a great solution. It's probably the least expensive solution out there. And again, I promise you, you're going to get the same performance as any of these. Now, are you going to get the widgets that these have? No. The older bikes that don't have the map switch and all that, right now, as of today, we can't add that stuff. But the ECU that comes from KTM is basically a blank ECU. It's been the same ECU since 17. Same part number, from 17 to 24. So what's that mean? Is technically I should be able to take a 2020 bike, push a 24 tune into that stock ECU, figure out how to get a map switch on the bike, and have all those features, right? Because the traction control is in the ECU algorithm. The quick shifter is in the ECU algorithm. The bike has a quick shift, you know, has a sensor on the gear position, so we can possibly add all that. So we're working on that. So those may be features we come out with. But on the 24 plus bikes that have the switch, we do retain all that in the stock flash, all right? So the next solution would be from Dynojet, the Power Vision. So what this does is this is just think of this as a tool to get the tune into your ECU. This is kind of like a dongle, right? It just talks to the ECU. The benefit of this over just a stock flash is now you have some data if you want. I mean, not too many people are going to put this on their bar, but you definitely could. and you have some running data on here. You can have up to 4 gauges at a time, and then you can have multiple screens of those gauges. So I can see engine coolant temp and RPM and throttle position and baro and map input, whatever it may be, if you want that data. Most of us aren't gonna be looking down as we're riding to watch that, but I like it to have coolant temp and some other stuff while I'm tuning. But you can log with it. So you hit this little round button on here, and as you're riding, it will start logging. So you can take that data, send it into me or Mike. We can look at that, say, oh yeah, hey, your bike's doing this. We can help you tune or whatever, we can send it back. Also with this, you can have a wideband input. So for anybody that wants to tinker around, if you're the type of guy that, hey, I like to play with my tune, I like to adjust stuff. Well, one, Dynojet is one of the few companies that allows you to do that, because as a Get user, Get can't even get software, right? The end user?
You can, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
It's like $1,300-1,400.
Yeah. So not too many guys are gonna do that. Dynojet does allow you the software online. You can download it for free. There's some caveats to that. They recently went to a program where they don't let you get into all the tables that I can see. So I can see, all these crazy tables. You guys might see like 4 or 5. If you want to see and really get into the crazy tables, you'd have to buy like a permission from them, and they would let you into the software and let you do some more stuff.
Limited to like how much fuel you can actually add. Like there's some limitations to what you can do. Like,
That's on the Power Commander, yeah. On the Power Commander with that software.
talking about
With the Power Vision, there's no limitations on the adjustment side, just how many tables you can see. Yep.
Is that wireless?
Huh? No, this would have a cable. It's over there. This would have a cable that goes into the diag port of the bike. Yep. Good question. So if you want to tinker, you can do all that. So now you can see other tables, and you can also bring in another little module, which I didn't bring, but it's another wideband module. So now with that wideband data, again, we go around, we hit the button, we log that data. So it's looking at throttle position and RPM, and it's looking at AFR data. You come back, you go into the Dynojet software, you hit one button in TuneLab, it processes that data for you, reflash the ECU, and now you've got a tuned bike. You go out and you do it again. And you do it again until the bike runs the way you want it to. So it's almost like auto-tune. We don't call it auto-tune because auto-tune means real time, but it's very similar. Yeah, with the Power Commander, when you're auto-tuning, that's in real time. This is not. This is collecting data, then you process it, flash the ECU, then you go ride it again, and now you'll feel the change. All right? But again, for the end user, home user, this is super cool. This works really good. The other thing you can do with this, maybe you got a Razor at home. You got a Razor at home, Dynojet has support for Polaris. They have some really good tunes for Polaris. You can now flash your Razor with it. Or maybe you already have one of these and you want to tune your KTM. Great, no problem. You have to buy the right cable because this doesn't have the same diag plug as a Polaris does. You're gonna have to buy a license. So when you buy one of these, it flashes one vehicle. You want to flash another vehicle, you have to buy another license. So you get the cable, you get the license, now you can flash that. Another drawback with Dynojet is the tunes that Dynojet offers on their website right now for KTM is stock improved only. That means stock can, reads in, stock. Anybody here have a stock bike? Oh, a couple, look at that. 3, nice, all right. Well, Dynojet's got a tune for you. Most guys are gonna have that stuff done, and Dynojet doesn't have a tune for you on that. That's where Mike comes in. So to get the taco sauce, you may have to buy a tune from Mike to get that in there. Drawback to that, possibly, you buy a tune from Mike. Tunes are locked. So if you want to adjust the tune from Mike, that's a no-no. We're not gonna let you read out all the hard work that we did and go give it to somebody else, right? We spent a lot of time on that. We're keeping that in-house. But we're happy to help you if there's an issue with that tune, absolutely. Mike, I think, has the best customer service I've ever seen in this industry, and I've been around it a long time. So if you got an issue, send that tune in. If you have one of these, all the better, obviously, because now we can get some real data, and know what's going on. So that's really good. As far as, the tuning and the stuff that we did on the bike, what are we trying to do? We're trying to give you, again, the best running bike. I'm a performance junkie. I want to see that number. Again, we were in Baja. We were doing these huge hill climbs. Me and Darren actually did a little race or whatever, and I was like, dude, I wasn't even at 50% throttle. You know, I didn't, you know, I got a KTM 500. I didn't even need 50% throttle to go up these big hills. So do I really need that peak number? Probably not. But I like to see it on the dyno. So we do go for that, obviously, because that's important. We want good power, but we want smooth power. It's got to be usable. And Mike's really got me, you know, going into these enduro maps. He's like, dude, we got to build this enduro map. I'm like, what's an enduro map, dude? And he's like, I want it to be flat. I want it to just do this. I'm like, well, go buy a 250 then. You know, why do you need an enduro map? So I have to get into that mindset. Again, for me, I don't need an enduro map. That's not my riding style. If it's twitchy, I shift up, or I don't use as much throttle. I don't know. So he's teaching me, right? So we're trying to do these really nice, smooth maps. So that's going to be, you know, our enduro maps that we'll have available to you if need be. Once we get this map switch going, there will be a performance map, an enduro map, and we've been working on it quite a bit. Some bikes need more than others. You know, we're doing it's easier to make power than to take power away. I found that out very easily, and especially on a single cylinder bike. If this was a 4-cylinder bike, way easier, because now you can offset cylinders, you can do all that kind of stuff. You just got one big air pump here, and it's very hard to do it. So Mike, we're getting somewhere on the 350. He really liked that down in Baja. The 500, we did a 17 to 19. We're getting pretty close on that one. This one, we still got some work to do on this one. Does anybody else like enduro maps? Is that something you guys are all looking for? Something a little bit softer? Is that your type of riding, Rago? No, you're a Baja guy. You're what? So
I'll just use less throttle.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. You know, but again, that less throttle has to be smooth. Also, these bikes, untuned down low, is terrible. It's really bad. It's really twitchy down low.
You don't want a light switch.
Yeah, it's unpredictable, right? So when it's tuned correctly, at least it's smooth. You know when you do this, what it's gonna do, you know, right? So once I get my bike tuned, I'm good. I don't need that lesser power map, but we'll see. And this traction control stuff, like I said, we're working on. We just got those tables today. We'll start working on those maps here in the next week and figuring that stuff out. And hopefully we can get somewhere with that.
I will say, like, because you know, you answered the question for me. I like wide open throttle, and I do. But the guys I ride with, as I've seen them all come to these capabilities and traction control, they all say took a little getting used to, but now I put it on and I leave it on.
Right. Uh-huh.
So it's I think it's a process, and you've either embarked upon it or you haven't yet, and you may not ever.
Uh-huh.
But I think the demographic of folks that haven't done it yet and try it and hate it, but after giving it a solid effort, is probably a small group, because I think this stuff probably does work better, make it easier for you.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's definitely guys out there that, you know, not the best riders, you know, and why they're buying a KTM 500, I have no idea. You know, Mike's got me kind of sold on the 350. I finally rode one of those recently, and I was like, this bike's pretty dang good. You know, it's got good power. It's very predictable. You know, so it's nice to have it when you need it. Any questions on any of that stuff?
I got a small question for you.
Yes,
so
sir.
I got the Reflash. So stock for NCAT.
Yep.
I've messed with the idle a little bit, trying to kind of help not wanting to die off the snappy off the bottom.
Sure.
Now that I'm Reflash, is that kind of overwritten that? Do I need to dial
Nope.
back that screw?
No, wherever you like it, to be honest with you. Mike usually sets his bikes 1900, 2000 RPMs.
That's probably something.
You know, but no, that's since you're still working off the stock ECU, those stock TPS values have not been overwritten or anything like that. So you're good to go. You still play with, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, no problem.
Sweet.
The bung coming out of that pipe with that sensor, what is that?
So this is the O2 sensor.
Would my 17 benefit if I installed an O2 sensor?
So only if you have a way to do something with it. So you said you have a Get, right? Currently Get, as far as I know, they don't have their auto-tune module. They've been working on it for quite some time. When they have that, it's possible.
Really?
You know. Now again, Derek's done a really good job with these tunes. I've ran quite a few of those tunes on this dyno, and they're right there. I mean, every one I've seen so far has been right in there. So are you going to benefit from it? Don't know.
Is there
If your bike runs well, leave it alone.
Yeah, I mean, does it help in altitude? Does it read?
It definitely can, but you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
That's the thing. So with this, you can log data and actually see what it's doing. You know, again, that's why I still have the Power Commander and my auto tune on the bike, because I also have the Dynojet pod display, so I can read AFR in real time. I don't do it through the PV3 at the moment, but I'm going to change that. But I like to look at that data, and I know.
You know what you're looking
Right.
at, though, too.
Yeah, and well, that's a good question. So what are you looking at in AFR? So like I said, stock is in the 15s. We want to be, ideally, for peak performance, if you're anywhere from 12.6 to 13.4, this bike is going to run absolutely beautifully. You know, you'll make a little bit more power at 13.4, 13.5 on the dyno, but that's not good for out there. Out there, you want to be in the 12.8, keep it a little bit cooler. You really don't lose much power, and that's fine. If you start going up in altitude and the thing gets in the 11s, you got a problem. You know, if it's in the low 12s, you're still okay. These bikes are pretty forgiving for the window that you can be in. Ideally, it's a small window, but out here, it's still going to run fine. Yeah. So, and that's all you would do. So you would log with that, and you're like, oh yeah, hey, when I go above 8,000 feet, it's lean. And when I had my Power Commander on an auto tune, what it would do is it would build a trim table. So in that trim table, I could say, hey, it's asking for -8 degrees when I'm up here. Not 8 degrees, -8 fuel when I'm at altitude. It's corrected me for it, so I'm always perfect. But at least I can go back and say, hey, so if I'm gonna ride a high altitude, I could change my map, take out 8 fuel across the board, and I know that's what it needs to compensate for. These bikes aren't too bad for altitude compensation that I found. Well, I don't know the highest I've been. I've been up Mount Charleston, of course, that's 8,600 feet, no problem. I had no issues. I went to that
With
Angel's Landing.
Without the O2 sensor.
With or without.
Just as well.
It was fine. Again, are you going to notice a performance drop? Absolutely, because the bike does run worse. But as long as it's not like blubbering or doing something stupid like that, you're fine. You're fine. But this is just for guys that want to tinker, or somebody that's done some build. Maybe there's a guy out there that's put this 450 head on his 500 already, and he has no idea what to do with his tune. That's a great option. So again, Dynojet's one of the few that have it now. I know Get's working on it. The AIM, he showed us his setup. They got a really cool setup. It's too bad they couldn't be here tonight, because they do have their ECU, this Type N ECU is pretty neat with their map switch, and they've got some data logger stuff. It's not over here, but it's pretty cool stuff.
What does the AIM do that the Get doesn't do?
One thing they do, they have a barrel sensor that I believe is, personally, I think is a little bit better setup than the Get. Their software, not that I dove into the Get stuff too much, the Maya software that Get has, I don't personally like it as much as the AIM stuff. But again, are you guys gonna use any of that? Not so much. So at the end of the day, for the end user, these two things are pretty dang comparable. You can't go wrong with either one of these, by any means. Their tactile, their new switch that they have is a little bit nicer, but 6 one, half dozen the other. The average guy is never going to notice the difference, I don't think, in those tunes. And again, it's all about the tune. You could buy one of these tuned by somebody bad, and it's going to be horrible, right? So it's all about the tune inside more than anything. Again, when we went riding, we went back and forth between the Get ECU at the time and a Power Commander. You couldn't tell the difference. And there's a little bit of performance gain on the table, but you can't feel it out there as much. So it's all about the tune that's in it. Reads in or reads out. I'm a reads out guy. I want that peak number. And if you got a 24 bike, it's coming out no matter what. So you don't have to worry about it. I went to another place and did a training, and brand new bike off the showroom floor. And we're breaking in on a dyno, and I'm like, things just went, whoa. I'm like, what is going on with this thing? I'm like, dude, you put fuel in it? He's like, yeah, it's got fuel. He goes, it's got 1 mile on it. Reeds fell out.
Suck the reeds in?
Sucked the reeds in backwards. It had 1 mile on it. And if I hadn't been working here for so long, I would never have known that. I would have been chasing fuel pressure and everything else. I would never have looked for that. So, yeah, thanks for that one, Mike.
Does Taco Moto offer dyno time?
I don't know, do you?
You do.
I do?
You do.
I mean, just out of curiosity,
Yes.
I'd like to know if my bike's doing
Yep.
the best that it can do.
Yeah, Mike has been gracious enough to allow me to use the dyno whenever I need to. So yes, if you'd like to get your bike in a dyno, I'm happy to help you. Not a problem. Yeah. This dyno actually came from Dynojet, originally. So when they closed down the office here, I told Mike, dude, you got to buy this thing. And I think he's glad he did now. So
Yeah.
we've been using the heck out of it. Yes, sir.
So I, 55, just started riding just over a year ago. Bought a used KTM 500 17
Yep.
with the JD.
JD tuner. Yep.
I have no idea what I'm missing. I'm interested in this the map switch with the number 2. But what am I missing? Where should I go?
Yep. So those JD tuners been around a long time under a million different names. Mark Dobeck started that type of box way back when. He actually started Dynojet way back when. Interesting guy, but then that tuner is very basic, very, very, very basic. So it can only add fuel for one, has no other inputs but injector signal. So it's basing its load off of the input of the injector. And it's just saying when you have your low, mid, high, or whatever, however they broke it down, they're just taking that injector signal and just spreading it out,
No
X amount.
timing.
There's no timing, there's no throttle position input, there's only RPM ranges. So it gets its RPM from the injector, which on these bikes is erratic at best. Why the Power Commander has a crank position input, because we try to do fuel injector for a long time, but these bikes are so noisy, we had to go to the crank. So again, with that unit, you're not gonna run lean, you're not gonna be terribly off, but it's not perfect by any means. We actually did a test here not too long ago, and we could not get the fuel where we wanted to. We maxed everything out, we still couldn't get the fuel exactly where we wanted. Again, you're not gonna hurt anything, but you shouldn't have the feel that you would with a properly tuned motorcycle by any
I'm
means.
missing out some.
Yeah, and you definitely are. Is it huge? Probably not. And again, it's one of those things you don't know till you know. You get it up here, you look at the air fuel and see where you're at. But having the map switch and all that, you're only going to get with one of these other products. You can't get it with that.
And if you wanted that traction control feeling, you need fuel and
timing. Yeah,
You need both of them.
absolutely. You'd be amazed as to what we're doing with these Enduro tunes right now to get it to where Mike wants it. It's crazy how much fuel and timing we're altering to get the feel that he wants.
So it'd be worth it just to upgrade the ECU instead of buying a 2024.
Or
Yeah.
Can you reflash a
Yeah,
17?
yeah. I was just gonna say, Reflash is probably your best option. It's definitely your best bang for the buck, no doubt about it. I can get you a perfectly good running motorcycle with that. There's an 18 out there that we did that runs really, really good. Now, currently, we can't do the map switch thing for you. It's possible down the road. Again, we're working on something, but I can't promise it.
Can we talk about how we're going to get the map switch for the older gen bikes? So just regarding the map switch, on the new chassis bikes, 24 up on the Enduro side, they have a connector for a map switch that sends that signal, that data signal, the CAN bus signal into the ECU, and the 24 generation bikes have that connector. So when Dusty geniuses through those data fields and figures out what we need to, so it's a lot of, think of like this, here's a little analogy. We
Mike
want
and
to
his
make you
analogies.
dinner. We have a dinner we want to serve you. We want to put the things in it that you like, that you want. We want to put the right ingredients in there. And so we need to figure out which of the data tables and all the information we want to bring over into our recipe to make that dinner for you, and which ones we don't. So we need to figure out where we need to bring that data in for the map switch to work on the 24 bikes. We're pretty close to that. On the previous generation bikes, there's no connector. The earlier generation bikes were not CAN bus. They had a toggle switch. They essentially had a very low-tech switch. KTM did not put the harness on that 17 through 23 bike to allow you to have any map switch at all on the Enduro bikes, on the plated, homologated 50-state bikes. So what Dusty is going to genius through is which pins on the ECU, which are not being used, that the harness would have a connector for and a pin for that would have gone to a map switch. What we have to do is figure out what those pins are, and we're gonna offer a map switch that you put on your bars, and it's gonna have a wire loom, and you'll have to do a little surgery. You'll have to, if you've ever looked at the back side of your ECU connector, there's a lot of wires and a lot of rows. You're gonna have to tease out the little blank plug and stick in this harness that we're gonna make, stick in the right wires so that you can have a functional map switch, and the ECU will receive the signal and then respond accordingly. So that's a long answer to say for you, we don't have a map switch for you yet, but we will. And when we do, you'll have to do a little operation. You can come here and we'll do that for you. And you'll have this map switch that will let you, with Dusty's brilliant tune and this Reflash product, get you correct, accurate tuning for map 1, and then map 2, an Enduro tune, traction control, all that other stuff. So that was a long way to answer that probably simple question, sorry.
All good, all good.
It was said earlier that the same part number has been with this KTM ECU forever. So does that mean all these parameters are locked up in the older ECUs?
Yep. So if you look at it right now, well, again, this goes to some of the Dynojet engineer, but they'll expose tables as much as they know in that ECU, and it may not apply to that particular bike. Like I said, I have a 1718 right now that shows traction control settings. Technically that bike doesn't have that, but it is in the ECU. But it's not turned on in that tune compat. So when Dynojet when we talk Reflash stuff, it's a little bit different. I think, you know, like a Get or whatever, same map in here from 17 to 24, right? You put this on any 17 to 24 bike. When I do a Reflash or Power Vision, we have multiple tunes. We have tunes for 17 to 19, that's a tune. 2023 is a tune, 24 plus is a tune. Reason we did that is when we do a read of the ECU, it pulls out obviously all those tables, and it pulls out a thing called a tune compat. It's like an operating software ID that's in there. And we're like, okay, this is this one. That's a long number, but I'm like, okay, that belongs to a 17 bike. And when I compare a 17 bike to a 20 bike, there's differences in the tune. Is that due because the bike's different? No, it's pretty much the same bike. Or is it due because there's a different calibrator that did that tune? Maybe one guy did 17, another guy did 20, and he attacked it a different way. I could do the same thing as them, put one tune in all those, but I decided to do different ones. I don't know what Dynojet's doing. I think they're doing different ones also, but from Taco Moto, we're gonna do different parameters. So I could take a 24 stock file and force it into a 17 ECU, and it should have all those parameters turned on and it should work. And again, since I just got this stuff today, that is stuff we're gonna try. So I'm going to take that 18, I'm gonna force this file into there, and I'm gonna turn on traction control, and does it work?
Might create a monster.
Right, if it does, sweet. You know, now we've got, you know, a feature that no one else has. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff it's still in its infancy, and I promise you the bike's gonna run very well. I don't know what's gonna happen to all these extra features that we're working on. And
does the new CAN bus system in the KTMs offer a lot more options going forward? Does that help?
For reflashing or no?
Yeah, for ECU work and just the bike in general.
Mm-hmm. It's simpler. I mean, it's, you know, obviously all cars, all automotive bikes are all going to CAN bus, and it has for many years. It makes the wiring much simpler. It does make it easier to add other things down the road, but you have to be on that CAN bus protocol, which I am not good with. So got to find someone smart that can, you know, talk to that, you know, that CAN bus, that protocol for sure.
As far as
Yes, sir.
diagnostics, if you take all three of them and compare them against one another, is there one that's more universal, or do you have software like laptop, or do you do it with your phone? What's the pros and cons of that?
Sure. If you look at the AIM stuff or the Get software and their diagnostic, it's going to be very similar if you're coming from the automotive world and you see a bunch of, you know, multiple graphs, you know, and you got to like follow the trace and be like, okay, that one's doing this, that one's doing that. Those two that I've looked at are fairly similar. I've not dove into those very heavily. The Dynojet stuff, again, I've been there 25 years, so it's very simple for me to look at the data coming out of the stock ECU into the Power Vision, because I can bring it into the dyno software. And that's one of the beauties of Dynojet. And again, I don't work for them anymore. I'm not biased anymore, but they're the only company that makes a dyno and makes software to tune a vehicle. You know, there's other companies that make dynos, there's other companies that make tuning software, but there's nobody that makes both. So they've done a really good job of integrating those together, and makes it very easy to see that data. So now, I mean, on a horsepower run, I can see exactly what that ECU is doing at that exact RPM and, you know, whatever on the horsepower run. And I can see that in a very easy format. And they also allow you to not only see it in graph form here, you can export it to Excel. Some people like Excel stuff. So for me, Dynojet's easiest, but the other two are very similar.
So that would allow you to go in and like read or clear fault codes, or say you come out, it doesn't start, you can look and see what's not.
Absolutely, you can see what's not firing. Yeah, you can see all those any of those ECU channels. You know, obviously, if it's not starting, well, is the injector not firing? Is the ignition not firing? It's one of those two things, more than likely. Yes, all three of these, you could see those channels. So yeah, no problem. Theirs is obviously different as far as, you know, because it's their own signal going out and own signal coming back. Dynojet is reading the stock stuff, but yes, you could tell all that.
Can I
Yep.
add a little bit of that?
Yep.
So the question is, let's do this. So when I was asking years ago, when I first started going down this rabbit hole, I was asking a question similar to that. What are the differences between the ECU products, and what are the ways to talk to it, to read data out of it? So if we start with the stock reflash, so what Dusty's talking about is a reflash, you can use the little Power Vision guy as a scan tool. So you can take your Dusty reflash here, and with your Power Vision, you can either leave it on the bike, or you could put it in your toolbox, and you can read codes, you can look trouble codes, you can also look at live, whatever the parameters are and Dusty could talk to you later about every single one. But you can use this as a scan tool, talk to your ECU, clear codes. So this is better than nothing, because on your stock bike, if you want to see codes or read codes, you can go to the AutoZone and get a little scan tool and clear them. So it's similar, but this will allow you higher levels of interaction with your ECU. So this is like a scan tool plus. And Dusty was talking about how you could bring in your data. This right here really unlocks the capabilities of the stock ECU. If you have Vortex, you have no, other than a check engine light, there's nothing you can do to talk to your ECU. So you can't get any information out, you can't send any information in, unless you happen to be a tuner, like a shop like us who has invested the money and the time to get the software, to learn the software. So if you're a rider and you have an ECU that has an issue, you probably have to send it in, so it can be looked at, interrogated to find out what's going on with it. The Vortex is a great box. It's old tech on purpose. Its mission statement is, we're not trying to set any records for new fancy stuff. We run your bike. The stock ECU and the Vortex ECU kind of have a similar philosophy in that way. Your bike starts, your bike runs. If you want fancy stuff, you have to go somewhere else. But there is nothing wrong with the Vortex box. A lot of Baja 1000s have been won on the Vortex. A lot of Supercross races have been run on a Vortex. You've got dials here. If you want to get more in depth into that later, I can tell you more. But absolutely great box. A lot of people only want this box in their bike. They pull stock ECUs out and they put these in all day long. So nothing wrong with that box, but no features, no functions, no interrogation.
And you can simply tune that Vortex with those dials, right? Lift your seat out, lift your seat up, turn the dials, put your seat on, and ride. So
Field trims.
Yeah.
Yes.
Field test it.
Yes, you can change field trims with the Vortex. Yes, very easy with a screwdriver. The easiest of all of them, well, hang on though, because as I say that, we have now, so let me not say what I almost said. I said the easiest. It's equally as easy as these other ones, but we'll get into that. But yes, a screwdriver to change field trims. Now, with these two guys, the Get allows you to talk to and then send information to your ECU through the Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi and your phone app act as you open the door of interaction with your ECU. You can see codes, you can clear codes, you can read about what the codes are. You can adjust ignition timing, adjust fuel tables. There's a lot. The highest level of user functionality is with the Get. Any questions about that? Also, the highest level of confusion. I'll just say this: if you're not a tinkerer, then you can still run the Get. The Get is as plug and play as a Vortex or anything else. So you can just get a Get, put it on your bike, and not have any of those features. A lot of us drive vehicles that have fancy dashboards and lots of buttons that I have never bothered to learn, and I don't think I want to learn them. But there's a lot of cool stuff there if I wanted to go down those rabbit holes. So that's the Get. The Aim, yes.
Quick question on the Get. So with your phone, with the app and Wi-Fi, you have bidirectional communication from the phone to the.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And I've done that. My check engine light has come on and flashed. I've used my app to read the code and clear the code. Right?
Yes.
So I don't even have to take my seat off to do that.
Yes. And there's people that have bike problems that do screen grabs of data screens, send them to us, and then we can help you pinpoint how to fix your bike. We've done that many times. My bike is XYZ. Okay, we'll go into this screen and that screen, capture it, text it to us. Okay, why don't you start looking here?
Do they make those for the larger KTM adventure bikes?
Negative, singles only. So this is a single. This is the 33 pin Cahin format. So only Dusty had mentioned this, or maybe Derek. Yamaha, KTM, Honda, Suzuki, Kawasaki. When Cahin came out with the first fuel injection system years ago, Bosch had already developed a fuel injection system, but Cahin really cornered the market, and it's been adapted by all the other brands. And then lastly, the AIM. The AIM is the newest ECU out there. Not many people have heard of it. The AIM guys were here all week. Lots of great stuff. And they have a very user-rich map switch that acts as the communication, the two-way interface between the rider and the ECU. And then the AIM also has, I'm going to do a video that just really deep dives all of these things, but just by way of, sorry.
No app for that one yet, right?
They
AIM, they're
have a
working on it?
Wi-Fi coming. So they have an app coming, they have Wi-Fi coming. One really great thing about the AIM that's very impressive is they have a free tuning software utility that you can put on your laptop, and then they have a little interface cable that will plug in between your laptop and your ECU, and I could remote into your ECU and talk to it, make changes to it. I could see what's wrong with your bike, laptop to laptop, so we can remote into your ECU and figure and help you fix your bike remotely. That's like next level stuff.
At $25 a minute.
Whatever Dusty's going to charge you for that. So that's next level stuff. And then they also offer a module that plugs into your laptop to your ECU. This would be the same module, but if you were a small shop, a small repair shop, or a small race team, you could get set up with this, and then you could get a data acquisition system with an O2 sensor on your bike, and so you could tune all of your bikes through this data acquisition system, and then be able to map each one of your bikes uniquely and independently. So the AIM right now is sort of jumping to the head of the pack in terms of features, capabilities, and functions. And the Get guys, no doubt, are gonna get mad, and they're gonna. This is the race that we benefit. We benefit. So these guys are competitive. They see that somebody else came out with a new feature, and then they one up that, and then everybody's gonna keep one upping everybody, which benefits us all.
We saw it this week with Derek and these guys. We'd run the bike with one ECU and we'd make horsepower, and he'd be like, yeah, that's good. And then the other guy would walk over and let's try my ECU.
Yes.
And we'd make a run, and he'd go back to his laptop and try this. So we went back and forth, and it was crazy.
Awesome.
And it was great to see. It was like UFC. It was awesome.
It was awesome. Or I would be out test riding something, and then another guy would put this ECU in the bike and go test out and tell me what you think. And so it's just this.
It's so what they weren't here for, but it was great.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
and-
No,
but that's the different types of equipment and how you can interact. And again, like that analogy with the car and the dashboard, you may not care about any of this. Then ignore it. Ignore it. Plug in any of these ECUs, plug it in your bike, and go ride. But if you want all this cool stuff, some of these have cooler stuff than others.
Yeah, like we said before, all those, again, it's all about what's inside. So if you buy any one of those from Taco Moto, he's done all the testing on them. He's gotten certain people to do all the tunes, so you're going to run good. But which one do you want to spend your money on? That's the only decision you need to make. As far as the rest of it, your bike's going to run good no matter what you do.
If you did a blind test and you put different ECUs in it, would somebody be able to feel it?
The only thing I would say is if you were to turn traction control on or something and use that part of it, obviously you're going to know it's not, you know, a power command or one of the other ones for sure. But I think, you know, tune for tune, I don't think so.
The question was, if we set any of you guys out on a bike and didn't tell you what ECU was in your bike, would you notice? No. If you were running the race map. So whether it was a stock Reflash or a Get or an AIM or whatever, a Vortex, race map, race power, no, you won't tell the difference. The difference will come in when you try, should I move? Does it matter? I don't know, whatever. The difference will come in if you're the type of rider that wants those extra features. So if you want traction control, you need to get an ECU that has that. If you want bidirectional capabilities, so you then start making decisions on what piece of hardware to get based on what your desirability for functionality is. And the stock, Dusty said this, and it's absolutely true. Dollar for dollar, the best value is in a stock ECU Reflash if you just want a good, clean running bike. Done. And then you go from there. You want more functions, more features, then you just kind of start going up the ladder from there.
Yes, sir. Good question. It was asked if the tunes are done with reeds in or out and if it matters. All the tunes that we've done for the stock Reflash are all with at least some type of muffler or end cap and reeds removed. We assume 90% of the riders are going to be in that situation or that setup. So yes, they're all tuned for that. Yeah, I mean, you're not running at peak performance by any means. You're definitely gonna be running too rich, you know, with that setup. So yeah, I would recommend. Do you have maps at all for any of that?
No,
I don't think you do, right? Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't ran across that. So if that's a setup that you really want to leave, again, we're happy to tune that bike for you. If you want to, you know, dial in with the reeds in, I'd like to see what it does, to be honest. We've never tuned one. I mean, as soon as we get a bike on a dyno, first thing you do is rip those things out. You know, it's so. You're no gentleman. You said you run stock. Is that just the way you like your bike, or is that just because you didn't, huh? No, this gentleman behind you, sorry. Yep. Just got it? Okay, and what is it?
500 EX.
25 yep.
Just got it.
Gotcha. So you're running around, again, like we said, about 38 horsepower, you know, with your setup. And these things can get as high as, you know, like I said, 56, if the dyno wasn't so stingy, up to 60. So there's a huge improvement in performance if you think you need it. Yep. So again, your bike right now is running extremely lean. Derek kind of mentioned something earlier that these bikes don't have any way to learn. They actually do. The newer bikes in 2020, KTM started putting the O2 sensor on these bikes. So that means it's in closed loop. So it does take a reading from this O2 sensor in your stock exhaust to the ECU, and it has parameters that it stays in. Why KTM made it so lean, I have no idea. Normally with any bike that has an O2 sensor, you're gonna run it stoichiometric. That means 14.7 parts of air to 1 part of fuel. That's what the manufacturer assumes is the most efficient burn, the cleanest burn. So they do it for emissions reasons. So any sport bike you grab that has an O2 sensor on it, you put it on the dyno within closed loop area, which is usually low throttle, low RPM, it'll run exactly at 14.7. It'll stay right in that window. It'll go a little lean, a little rich, because that's what a narrowband sensor does. The KTM runs at 16:1, 15:16:1 in bone stock form. Why, I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense. So your bike is running way too lean, it's running way too hot. You can definitely fix some of that with a flash or a Get or, you know, replacement ECU for sure. And if you're gonna pull the reeds or do an exhaust, it's a must. Yes, sir.
So I have a 2020 350 and it does have the O2 sensor. So is that just a narrowband that's basically for emissions monitoring, or is it like how much does it actually change on the map?
Pretty,
side?
you know, I could pull that up. I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head,
It's
but
kind of like a dummy thing. Or is it
no, it's keeping you in a window, right? It's keeping you in a lane. How much it can learn, I don't know. It's in the stock ECU, and I don't remember the exact setting. Most ECUs will go plus or minus 40 off their stock fueling, so that's a lot. So what's that's doing is saying no matter what you do to the bike, it's going to keep it in this 14.5 to 1 or 14.7 to 1, and KTM's 15, 16 to 1 possibly.
Right. So stock for stock, would that theoretically be better for high altitude because you have something monitoring it versus nothing at all?
And I would say no, because again, that's just way too lean. And even if you go in altitude,
Yeah.
it's going, will it pull fuel out as you go to altitude? Yes, but it's still keeping you at 16 to 1. You know, so there's so much more performance to be had from going from 16 to 1 to 13 to 1. Huge, huge.
And then do the aftermarket systems, do they retain that same O2 or do you change it up?
Nope, most of these systems do not use an O2 sensor at all. So if you put any of these ECUs on your bike, you can just take the O2 sensor off. Now that is for closed course off-road competition bikes only, right? Okay.
Disclaimer.
So yeah, and then with a stock reflash, again, part of that is we're assuming it is for a race bike. So all of your emission devices, whether it be your purge valve, your O2 sensor, the early bikes with the pair valve on it, that is all disabled in the tune. So you can unplug any of those, you will not get a check engine light. Unfortunately, not totally. Well, obviously, like Mike said, these are only for single cylinder, to replace ECU. As far as Dynojet goes, down the road, they will probably look at it. Some of those bikes have the Bosch ME17, which is very similar to the Polaris UTV. So if they could get by the security side of it, it'd be very easy for them to do the rest of what they need to do. But for them, it's all about what's going to sell the most, and they just haven't gone down that road yet. Power Commander for sure. Now some of the newer bikes. What was it, 2021? I think 2020, 2021, when they start going to the 302 sensors. Dynojet's not doing anything for those bikes for sure. And as far as like the 790, 890 bikes, they did the 790 Duke, which the Adventure was the same thing, obviously. But we pushed everything to another company to take care of that. Kind of like we did for Mike. If you call up Dynojet for a Power Commander right now for one of these bikes, they're going to say we don't offer one. Go see Taco Moto. He's the only one that has the full solution for it for certain reasons. So we tried to find certain companies that would support, knew more about those offerings, and did their own kind of development and all that, and we would push them towards that. So what did you say you had?
The 2020 350 EXCF.
Yep.
And, 2018 1290 Super Adventure.
Yep. So the 2018 Dynojet does have a Power Commander for it. Yep. And now, obviously, it's not being a piggyback has to stay on the bike. So there's not one device for both solutions for what you have. There is companies out there that are doing some reflashing for some of the other bikes. Yeah, Bren Tuning. There's Bren's big into the BMW stuff. There is somebody that does the KTM's. I can't think of who it is at the moment. But yeah, they're out there. Anything else? Any other questions? No. I see cold pizza back there.
Thank you guys for coming. Thanks you guys for watching. Which one is it, Ron? That one or this one? This one. Okay. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions for me or Dusty or Derek, you could just shoot an email to support@tacomoto.co, and we're happy to help you. If you are watching this YouTube channel, please subscribe because we have more content coming. 25 is going to be a big year for a lot of content with a lot of deep dives on this tech as well as the bikes themselves and some of the weird things that we're trying with and experimenting on these bikes. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, go out, get some adventure.